Hi, my name's Todd Helzer. I'm with eXp Realty, and I work with the team Birmingham Investments Group, and we're so glad you stopped by. If you would like, go ahead and like and subscribe to this video if you want more Birmingham investment content. Today we have an exciting interview with Mark Byers from Signal Properties. We're going to talk about different property management styles and about where we see rents potentially going and where they already have gone during the pandemic. We hope you enjoy the content. Like I said, like and subscribe. Check it out. Hey, how's it going today, Mark? Appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I was really excited to have you on because honestly, a lot of our the people who watch the YouTube channel, are investors, and some of them are remote, out of state, some are in state. And, I would say the majority of people are using property managers. And so it's really an honor to have you on here and kind of, get the inside track on some of the stuff that we had talked about before, about kind of where rents are going, a little bit about where we see a good spot for rentals in Birmingham. So really excited to have you on and really appreciate your time. So wanted to start us off with just a little bit about yourself, how you got into property management, kind of your background, and kind of go from there. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I kind of fell into it. I finished up college in 2013 and got out of school and kind of realized, hey, I need to find something to do with my life to make a living. And my dad is in the commercial real estate world, and has done that forever. So I've been around the real estate world. And when I got out of school, I was talking to him and people he knew, trying to make connections. And through somebody he knew, I got put in touch with Matthew Whitaker, who owns GK Houses at the time. It's now Evernest, another management company in Birmingham. And I went to work for him right out of college.
Awesome.
Yeah, leasing houses, opening up doors, doing showings. And so went to work there, got a ton of experience. He is probably the best leader I've ever personally been around, and got great experience there, kind of learning how to grow a company and build systems and processes, and just learning the whole residential investment world. So that's how I got into the industry. Like I said, I worked there for about 5 years. We were growing the company, and they're continuing to grow the company nationally. And it got to a point with them that if I wanted to continue to take on more responsibility, make more money, I was going to need to move out of state and open an office out of state.
Right. Yeah.
And I knew that all my family's here. I had a few houses myself here. Knew we wanted to be in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And so I started this company about 4 years ago, and that's kind of how we got where we are.
That's awesome. So talk me through a little bit. Obviously you've grown. You worked really hard at like learning the business, but talk me a little bit through how it kind of worked. The leap. That's a little scary, right? It's a little bit, so it's like, how did you get there to where it's like, all right, let's do this? What was those conversations like internally? I don't know if you're married at the time, but with potential, but talk me through that.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, part of it was probably ignorance. I didn't know, how risky. In hindsight, I'm like, I can't believe I did that.
Right. That's funny.
It's pretty terrifying now. But at the time, my wife was working. She was a PE teacher. So we had her income, we had her insurance. We didn't have any kids at the time. So I think I thought, if I'm ever going to do this, now's probably the time, because if I fall on my face, I can go find another job. And so that was kind of the thought there, and kind of where we decided to do it.
Yeah, it's an interesting story because, like, at the end of the day, I think all of our investors, the people we work with, you had to come to a place where you took some risk, right?
Yeah.
Like, great with great risk comes great reward. And all of us are, kind of having to take that. And so we all have a similar story in our journey about where it's like, okay, you got to kind of put it out there and see if it works. And obviously you're 4 years in and it's going well. You guys are kind of our go-to property managers that we recommend all our clients work with, because you guys just do a really good job. Talk to me a little bit about that structure. I think you guys structure your property management in a unique way that provides some really good customer service. Talk to me a little bit through how you've just kind of taken what you've learned from, your previous employer, but kind of modified it to fit the way you want to run a business and provide that high level of customer service that we're used to, and why we recommend you guys.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, excuse me, if you go to these, or I guess if you've been around the property management world, go to these conferences, they talk about, portfolio management versus departmental management. And I think we do portfolio management. And what that means is, like, it's me. I manage a set of properties, and then I've got two other guys that also have their portfolios. And then we have a team under us that helps us in the different stages of the tenant life cycle.
Right.
And so, like, I'm responsible for a third of our owners and everything to do with their properties. So whether it's leasing, during occupancy, while it's vacant, at turnover, I'm responsible for that house throughout that entire cycle, which I think is good, because then that owner can call me and say, hey, what's going on right now? I've been to the house. I've seen it. I've met the tenant. I've, talked to them when they were signing a lease, talked to them when they have maintenance issues, talk to them when they're getting ready to renew or move out or whatever.
Yeah. And you kind of know the story of the catalog of it. You also know the story and what maybe the, owner is trying to accomplish with that property. Right. We're actually working with an investor right now who's talking about kind of switching over to honestly to you guys, because the previous format was that multi-management. So you go to an individual for your renovations, you go to someone else to work out permit stuff. Like, it just got to be where he's calling 50 different people rather than having a person that's taking, you just say, hey, I need this done. And they're like, we get it done. We'll take care of it. And so that's been I think he's really excited about that move. So that's, I think, I don't know per se, that world better, who does what style, but I would say that's probably one of the bigger reasons why you guys have been successful and why we recommend you all, because it provides that level of one person, one contact. You pick up the phone, there's relationship. And ultimately, like Rob and I talk about, this is a relationship business, it's hard to create relationships with 5 different vendors from one company,
Right.
So,
and it's challenging as you scale. You want to, because the thought behind the departmental management makes sense, as far as you have somebody that specializes in that part of the tenant life cycle, and that's what they're really good at, and that's what they do. And I think there's value in that. I think you just have to try to find a balance, and at least at the size we are right now, the number we're managing, I think we've found that it works best for us to do it the way we do it.
Yeah, that's great. So I know a lot of our viewers are really interested in about where rental rates are going. And so you kind of have the inside track to that. You kind of see the writing on the wall. You're always comping, you're always setting up new properties, and you're seeing some rises. Talk me through where obviously, if we all had a crystal ball, we'd be millionaires, right? But give me some ideas of what you're seeing as far as trends, what you kind of potentially foresee happening in 2022 and beyond. What's kind of the scope looking like for Birmingham, and then maybe just the market as a whole?
Well, I think yeah, like you said, I wish I had a crystal ball, and I try to preface all my conversations with clients and with people who ask me these kind of questions with, you know, I don't know, and I think that you need to get as many perspectives as you can, because this is my opinion, right? And
Right.
I could for sure be wrong, and I'm wrong all the time. And I think I tend to be a little more pessimistic about these things, just because I would rather under promise and over deliver than over promise
Correct.
and under deliver. But I guess the short answer is what we have seen happen. I think in the past few years, I would have told you, you know, a typical 3-bed, 1-bath house, you know, in a west side of Birmingham, Inslee, Fairfield, Midfield, Eastlake, that type of area is probably a 750 house. I think today that same house is probably an 850 house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, you know, across the board, rents have probably just in a standard typical situation have probably increased, you know, $50 to $100 across the board.
Right.
And I think, you know, if I had to guess, I would think that will probably continue. You know, with the demand for rental properties,
Correct,
still increasing. You know, the amount of money out there, I think, is just continuing to push everything higher.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I think, you know, we're seeing more cost for these properties, right? So there's more money in the market. So prices of homes are rising, and those costs ultimately hit the, you know, landlords, which then subsequently have to fall, you know, onto, if the numbers make sense to rent it, that rent has to be higher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would agree with you that, as you know, taxes are going to be increased on houses, and insurance gets increased, like all these factors of cost to the landlord increase, you have to compensate with higher rents. And then hopefully the economy as well is paying people more so they can afford the rents. And we've just kind of, I think with COVID and the amount of money that has been dropped into the economy, we're just seeing price jump in a lot of areas. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really, really pretty accurate, about $100 increase across the board in the last 2 years or so. Tell me a little bit about rental pricing. So when we talk about these different markets, would you also say it's a ratio? So if you say you had a property more in the $200,000 range of value, and it's renting for, we'll say, you know, $1,600, maybe, that, are you seeing just $100 jump, or is it probably a ratio where it's probably $150 jump in those markets?
Frankly, I would say, I don't know. I would probably say 100 again,
Yeah.
just because I want to be more conservative.
Right.
But like I said, to be frank, we manage. You know, our average rent is probably $900 a month, so I don't have as much data to pull from in my mind.
Right.
When I think of the $1,500 to $1,700 a month house.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so I want to segue into, we just put out a video about the Birmingham sweet spot, and I think we have had a lot of conversations in our office about it, and kind of just trying to figure out, like, where is the optimal place to invest in Birmingham. Obviously, other markets we can't speak to, but we're kind of the local experts. We have you know, boots on the ground. We own properties. You own properties. And we kind of, you know, if you watch that video, I'll probably put a link below to that video. It's a really good video Rob did. But it basically says that, you know, really from that 100 to 250 range, it's kind of the window that is, you're going to get optimal returns as well as equity appreciation, you know, in your home. From one of the points in that video is talking about maintenance costs. And so you send over some data to us, and we kind of have some medium house prices. So I wanted to kind of talk through it. You know, we kind of have some brackets of houses kind of in the $60,000 to $75,000 range, and the percentage of cost, lost to contractors doing maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of have some, ones in the 144 to 130 range, and the cost lost to those in maintenance. So talk me through those numbers and kind of generally what you're seeing when their cash flow at the end of the day sometimes is equal or if not greater in that sweet spot area. So
I think what this tells me is that generally the more expensive houses, like you said, tend to cost less from a maintenance perspective. And I think that is a function of, a variety of factors, but some of those would be a $200,000 house is in the Birmingham area is probably going to be a 1980 to 2005,
right?
Year built type house, and then the 65 to 75, even $80,000-$90,000 house these days, can be anywhere from 1920s to 1950s, 60s.
Yeah.
So I think there are obvious differences in a 100-year-old house versus a 30-year-old house, as far as major systems go. So I think that's one factor. And then I think you also, they're going to be in different neighborhoods. So it's the tenant that you're getting in that house has a different level of income. And I think tends to wear and tear on a house differently.
Yeah.
Which is a function of how much money you end up spending.
For sure.
Maintaining it.
Yeah. And we were seeing when we broke down the numbers, I mean, we're seeing in that 60 to 75 range about a 50%, cost to the, of the rent ratio. And then in the, 140s to 130s range, we were seeing about a 32%. So, obviously there's a lot of factors that go into this data. There's so many variables. We can't just say like, hey, this is perfect data. You for sure need to. But at the end of the day, I think the data does prove that, in the higher ranges, the maintenance costs of the Birmingham market are lower, which at the end of the day kind of helps your cash flow. And so what looks like a really, really good cash flow deal when you underwrite it, just realize, that if it's in the lower range, your maintenance probably honestly is not enough. And I actually have a video about CapEx and it talks to that because it's very subjective, right? It's like, how do I plan for CapEx? How do I know what a house is going to take? And sometimes, that's part of the risk of investing. And what we do is try to minimize that. So I know that you've built a business. A lot of our, investors, obviously entrepreneurs trying something new. I'd like to dive into a little bit of what you've learned through this journey a little bit. So tell me a little bit about your favorite failure. And I know that's hard to say sometimes or be vulnerable, but at the end of the day, I think we learn best from the things that were hardest. Sure. And it makes us not make those mistakes again, or we pivot. So talk me through one of those.
There's too many to choose from. I feel like I fail every day. We'll have a call and somebody will say, "How are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just trying to do a little bit better today than I did yesterday."
Because I'm thinking like, and this might be helpful because I had a property under contract. Actually had to back out of it. And I lost a pretty good amount of money on the earnest, because I did some mistakes with writing the contract. I did some mistakes with the earnest money. And, but full circle, it was actually a really great thing because I was able to back away from that deal and enter into some other deals with way better long-term returns than this one property. And so it's kind of one of those things where in the moment felt like honestly a huge failure, actually turned out to be a huge blessing in disguise. And also this property happens to be right around the road and I'll visit it. So something like that, where maybe in the business sense that you maybe made a misstep, but it has taught you, something that that returned way more in its value.
Sure. Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind is when in the first couple of years of being in business, I had a big client with I think he had 30 houses, which is a significant client. I mean, that's a significant client today.
Yeah.
But at the time, even more so. And he ended up firing us, and the reason was, I think we weren't being decisive enough about essentially evicting people when we needed to. We would continue to because the property management business is a there's conflict all the time, right?
Yeah.
I think we were trying to avoid conflict. We don't want to have to tell an owner that we've got to evict this person. We don't want to have to tell a tenant that, hey, you need to move.
Right.
And we were setting up payment plans, and people were following through some of the time, but not others. And it was, these situations were dragging out longer than they should have.
Right.
And so I think the lesson to me was a couple things. I think as we've grown, I think the firmer we are with tenants from a collections perspective from the very beginning, the better results we've had. So that was a huge lesson learned. And that's not to say we don't still try to work with people, but we can't let that, you can't, you have to be firm. And the other lesson was just communication with our owner clients and setting expectations and having the same expectations as far as what happens when, at what threshold are we evicting people? What are your expectations for that?
Right.
And then being proactive about the problem rather than reactive and waiting to be told, hey, or waiting for the question to be asked, hey, should we evict this person?
Right.
We need to go, we need to go be proactive in all these situations instead of reactive.
And that's great, because like ultimately you learn that lesson with that 30 door, and now you can apply it, and it's grown your business, and in the multiple doors that you have now, you can apply those lessons. And it's like, that feels like honestly probably a key to the success of you guys now. So
right at the
awesome.
time, it was like the worst thing that has happened. But if I think back on it, I'm like, okay, now that learning that lesson has helped me serve my 200 clients a lot better than I would.
Yeah. 100%. So you guys are expanding your building and stuff like that. What is kind of the next steps for Signal, where you guys are heading?
I think right now we're at a good size with 500 under management. In the past year, we've hired 4 more people. So this year, our plan is to kind of get stabilized, get these new hires trained and experienced, get our processes nailed down, how we do things, and really try to provide a really good service for our current clients before we start taking on more. And I think that 2023 we may have capacity to, right now we've got 3 property managers, so these 500 are split 3 ways.
Right.
We may be ready to bring on 20 or 50 more properties per manager.
Yeah.
And grow that way. And then we just want to be ready for opportunities where, if we've got a client, I get asked all the time, do you manage in Montgomery?
Right.
Do you manage in Huntsville? If we've got a client that wants to go start buying there and have that be a jumping off point, I don't think there's any reason why one of our guys in the office now can't go run an office there and duplicate this org chart there and run these systems there and manage, 200 properties there pretty easily.
Yeah, I love that. And to take the not a step back, but to take the moment to really shore up the systems to grow. I think about a couple of scenarios, but Hyundai, a long time ago, they weren't really known as a very good company. They weren't known as a reliable company. And so what they did is they actually took a 10-year process and they actually worked on their vehicles internals. So they weren't worried how they looked. They weren't worried about the flashiness. They were worried about making a reliable vehicle and change the story about them, and now we know Hyundai is a very viable car to buy, and lots of people like them. And then they took the next 10 years and worked on the visuals and the body aesthetics and made their product a little more appealing. But they worked on the internals first to make that reliability happen. And then all of a sudden you hear like, oh, I'm buying a Hyundai, and it's not like, this cheap car, when at first that was their story, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's great that you're wanting to expand, but you're choosing to bring the quality, make sure the quality control is there for the clients you bring on, that experience stays the same. That kind of segues a little bit into, not all property managers are honestly created equal. Let's be honest, we've all probably as investors had good experiences and probably not so good experiences. Like you said, it's a business of conflict. And how do you deal with that conflict? There's bumps in the roads constantly. How do you navigate that? How do you do it effectively and move on? And tell me a little bit about, say, maybe some bad recommendations you've heard in the industry, or just things that people should be aware of when they're vetting a property manager, the questions they should be asking, and kind of the red flags to say, maybe I should keep interviewing and talking through and finding someone.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think our relationships with our clients work best if there's a high level of trust, and they trust that we're doing what's in their best interest. So, I mean, what I tell people all the time is like, they need to be comfortable with signal before they sign up with us. As far as, I mean, I'll give them, I'll recommend that they go talk to, 3 or 4 other managers in Birmingham that I think have good reputations, and get really comfortable, because to me, if there's not a high level of trust, then and if both parties don't feel like they're doing what's in their best interest, then the relationship's never going to be there. Because
that's good.
So I think you need to be talking to somebody who, is local, who knows the street, who can go look at your house and give you the truth about what they're seeing, whether you're going to like it or not. I mean, I have to tell owners a lot of times, like, why did you buy this house? Or, I know you said that this wholesaler said it was a $5,000 rehab, but it's 15, it just, is. So I think there has to be that trust there, because your property manager is going to be spending your money. And they need to be able to, you need to be able to trust them to do that with your best interest in mind.
That's good. And, I think, like you said, it's relationship based and it's trust based. And those are important things, especially, when you're remote. Oftentimes a lot of our investors are remote. And so you have to have that boots on the ground. And I think too, like Birmingham's market specifically, like it is a very street by street sometimes scenario in some of these areas. And so to have someone that you can trust to say, hey, I really like this street, but this street's still coming along. It's developing, but it's not quite there. I would buy this house, not this house, or I would renovate this house, and, or we can get higher rents here because that street's just nicer. It's like the fact of the matter. It's like, I'm not telling you 2 stories. I'm just telling you the street just down the road, identical house. It's just not going to rent for quite as much because it's the street. And that's just how kind of Birmingham works. And to having a property manager that you can trust to say, no, I believe what they're telling me is true. Let's move forward on those, or get this renovated to get it rented, or whatever it is. One thing I've appreciated about your team, and I've kind of learned, is you guys are really good at kind of those rent ready rehabs, those turns. So you guys have like really good processes for construction crews and estimating renovations and stuff. Talk to me a little bit about that and just kind of your process for kind of gaining maybe a property that a renter pulled out and getting it rent ready. Kind of where your guys' advantage, because I definitely think your team is really good at that.
Yeah, it's a constant challenge finding good contractors and crews, but I think what we've got relationships with contractors that we've used for several years, so we know what we can expect out of the different contractors. There are some that are better at smaller jobs, some that are better at bigger jobs.
Yeah.
And can kind of know which crew is going to be a better fit for which scope of work. And it's always there are so many variables as far as how busy is this guy right now versus how busy is the other guy.
Right. Yeah.
If one guy's super busy, his price is going to come back a little higher than it normally would, and it's going to take him a little longer to get to it than he normally would. If he's looking for work, he might give me a little bit better deal, so I might go to him. And then we use the software we use is really good. We use a software called Z Inspector and try to give, like you said, a lot of our clients are out of state. We'll do the 360 pictures with the virtual tours.
Yeah.
With all the pictures that we can, we can send to let the owner see what is really going on and really needs to be done.
That's awesome.
Then, so we'll put together our scope of work and that report, and then we'll send that scope to these vendors, and we'll send the report to the vendors so that they can see it before they go out there, and request those estimates back and kind of, see what we can come up with. And a lot of times these contractors will catch things that I may have missed too, which is good. And I think the 360 pictures, virtual tours have been a game changer, because it's just the reality is it's a lot easier to sell my owner client on the fact that we need to spend $5,000 of his real money.
Yeah.
If I just pick up the phone and call him and tell him we need to spend that, he's much more likely to understand it and get it and be on board with it if he can go look at and zoom in on what it is and see the entire room, rather than me saying, hey, it needs paint, being told it on the phone and seeing it yourself are two different things.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to building that trust and relationship. It's like trust but verify. And and I know, absolutely. You guys ultimately have a lot of relationships with contractors. You keep them busy, so you probably are getting better rates for your clients. And those are all really good things. Last thing before I let you go, I kind of wanted to, I know that you are big on building business. You've kind of a book recommendation on what's helped you systematize or kind of work through building signal properties for those of, who are out there trying to, just kind of learn. I always like hearing a good recommendation.
Yeah. The go-to answer there is Traction, the EOS model.
Yeah, it's great.
Learned that at my first job and used it, and then have used it here. I mean, that book, I think we've got probably 8 copies around the office, and the cover's torn off, they're written in. Sometimes my wife tells me, I read that thing more than I do the Bible, because you're always going back and referencing it and picking up something new. And I think it's just been the meeting structure, the issue solving structure, all that structure that the Traction model teaches you is just crucial to be able to think big picture and not get caught up in the day-to-day. Because if you don't have those regular meetings and that structure in place, it's so easy to get sucked into putting out the day-to-day fires and never thinking about, okay, how do I move the business forward?
Yeah.
Just solving this, busted water heater problem.
Yeah, we can oftentimes work in the business too much and never work on it and work on, I've found honestly too, sometimes the tasks that are scary are the ones that help us grow and are going to expand our potential, right? And so you have to have some sort of system in place to make you do those things, because you know how to replace a water heater, but you don't necessarily know how to expand your business into Huntsville. Right. That's going to take time, effort, research. And so, having a structure of a system of saying this is a goal. Yeah, that's why traction is just, it's killer. So, well, Mark, I really appreciate your time. I always say that time is the most valuable asset we have, and for you to give it to our subscribers and the people watching this is just super valuable. Your boots on the ground knowledge of this area has just been super helpful, and I know a lot of people are going to get a lot out of it, so really appreciate it, man.
Awesome. I appreciate you making it happen.
Yeah, man, we'll catch you later.
All right, sounds good.